for doing that.
And we are recording. Yay.
Thanks, Colin. So do you use like OBS to like stream other stuff as well?
Yeah, I sometimes stream on Twitch. I've stopped doing that as much recently, but I'm trying to get like just more into like consistency of content creation. So I decided every time I go on and play RuneScape, I'll just record it. So that's my main
That's
purpose
nice.
for OBS now. Yeah.
Colin, do you know anything about Dr. Disrespect?
Yes, I do. I saw the whole thing unfold.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
I think that his YouTube live stream has to be record breaking. Like he hit 500,000 viewers within like the first 10 minutes of going live.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it was really crazy, especially because just a couple hours before going, well, like he was live for a long time, but it was just like the pre-stream, and it was like 200,000, and then as soon as he came on, it like jumped up 300,000. It was insane.
And then he got tweets with like 800,000 likes that were just like weird ominous videos of like did you see that part? Like
the music video.
Yeah, like the day before he tweeted out a video that was just like him staring at a rainy window, and it was like 3 minutes long, and then it got like 500,000 likes.
Yeah, I saw that. It was I can't remember how the song went, but yeah. Why do I try? Why do I even try? Or something like that.
I believe in the conspiracy theory that it's all just a stunt for PR, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like a pregame before YouTube buys Twitch.
YouTube buying Twitch would be surprising, but
yeah,
him switching to another platform, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he'll go all out on YouTube.
Well, and then I'm wondering where like Shroud and Ninja are gonna go.
Oh yeah, because Mixer shut down.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we're at a good time to start talking about project management. Cheng, do you want to give us a little bit of an update from the initial one? I watched that and got myself caught up on everything.
Let me
Why don't we do introductions first with all of us, and then we can jump into that.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up. I'm trying to find the thread in our new platform. Okay, Control F. Oh, here it is. So.
Well, did you, like Alexander said, maybe we should do introductions real quick.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Nicole, as you can see, and I work at a tech company under a revenue operations department, and I am a data reporting analyst that partners really strongly with our finance team. And we do a lot of cross-functional projects in revenue operations that spans implications between marketing, sales operations, finance, and accounting.
Can I ask which tech company?
Puppet. So they're in DevOps automation.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard of it.
Colin, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'm Colin. Nicole, I know I've spoken to you. Edward, I know I've spoken to you. Chang, I know I've spoken to you once. Alexander, I think you're the only one I haven't formally met, so hi. I do a lot of things. I'm primarily a front-end web dev, but I just got hired back in my old company for a trial period of being a full, formal project manager. So this is an exciting chat since that actually just started officially today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait. Are you graduating high school soon?
No, I'm going into my junior year this year.
Yeah. Nice.
So this will be exciting, and I'm also transferring to an online school, so I'll have more time for my project management job.
Nice. questions. Chang, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm Chang. I'm a data scientist at Lowe's, but recently I've been a lot more involved. I guess on the more like the managerial side of things, because just like kind of like fell into it. So we had a chat on managing data science project, and so that was kind of like my first foray into like how to like figure out how to ship things and how to kind of like manage humans.
All right, and I'll round it up. My name is Alex Antonison. I am the data services manager at Stratazan. We're a healthcare strategy startup. At Stratazan, data services encompasses both data engineering and data science, which are two very different ways of management. But I've had an opportunity to kind of learn a lot since I took on this role last October. I'm also the organizer of Data Nerds, which we are getting started up again. So y'all like talking about data.
Oh yeah, I saw a tweet about that from Nick on the Penny U Twitter.
Yep.
Seems exciting.
So another selfless plug. So I guess we can do that over you, Chang.
Oh yeah, sure. So I thought Edward was like in and he was like out.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the last thread that I put in there as the what do you call it? The summary. So the original problem was okay, like we have this we started building this team that does computer vision for Lowe's. And we had me plus 2 other people. And then we were like, okay, like how do we like decide like okay, like how to ship things? And somehow the burden of making sure things ship on time fell on me. And I'm like, okay, there's a few situations I don't know how to handle. For example, how do you set, like when you have external expectations, how do you negotiate that, and then like both externally, internally, so your team feels like, oh, I'm not like too rushed, but in the meantime they're not feel like, okay, I don't have enough work to do, and then you want to make sure that hey, like things actually get done if they have to be done. So I ask a few questions to just like kind of throw it out to the group. And the few things I heard most kind of like bigger points, my takeaways are, one, like we got to find a way to let people own the problem, give people some ownership so they feel like attached to it. And then the other, which I think now I think about is very important, is you got to have some way to have regular checks, ways that you can kind of like where you can nudge people, but you don't have to like micromanage. So how do you build something kind of like not exactly procedure, but like how do you manage the project so people feel like, okay, I do know I do have ownership of the problem, and they also get regular checks about their progress in some way. That was my takeaway last time. So I did experiment a few things, and but before I go into that, like I don't know, like any thoughts of like, for example, I like Nicole. What was the reason that you want to talk about this?
So I tried to unmute myself and then just made my picture really huge. The reason why I wanted to talk more about it was because the projects that I specifically work on are not as a manager, but as like an individual contributor who's working within a large team of people with like cross-functional duties. But whenever there's a system change, it impacts many of us, and so they want impact from many. They want like impact analysis from all of us. But when we have these meetings, sometimes I find myself thinking, okay, what did we decide and who's in charge of what and when do things need to be done? And I was thinking about suggesting like a new way of um, managing our projects cross functionally. And I thought, oh, if there's any project managers out there, maybe some people have some tips or best practices, or hey, here's what I tried, but didn't work out very well. Just kind of doing some information gathering before I make any sort of like suggestions to managers who tend to be very receptive to help and suggestions. And because of that, I like to try to do my homework before I go to them with you know recommendations. Yeah. So it's coming at it from a little bit of a different angle, but I also wanted to hear what takeaways you had, and how that all went for you. So
Okay,
I'd love to hear that before we get in. Yeah.
that is really interesting because I'll just tell you what I thought worked and what didn't work. And because for one, I'm not a project manager, and I was reading a book because I got into this foray of, okay, like now I need to manage people. So I was reading this book called Managing Humans by I forgot who's that. Book by Michael Loeb. But I mean, it's just like a bunch of story. But in one of the article, he said like, oh, if you're like a technical IC and you feel like you're like good manager, whatever, like he has one chapter to say, if you feel like you're doing too much project management, you should really find a good project manager who just do project management. And I'm like, wow, maybe I shouldn't be doing project management at all. But for now, I think it's inevitable. And I think it did make me learn a lot about like how do you think about things. So I'll just tell you what I thought worked and what didn't. So I think the first point about giving people ownership, that if done wrong, can backfire. So the thing is, when I was in that chat in that was May 12th, I wrote the summary. It was me plus 2 other people. Now it's me plus 4 other people. So the complexity of the team within the team has like increased from taking a single project. Now our team handles 2 projects simultaneously. And I was having a little trouble about how to give people ownership because a recent feedback that I kind of like got from our one-on-ones on everybody on the team was like, they started to feel a little siloed. As in, because in the data work, a lot of time, especially when you're doing exploratory work, it's very hard to collaborate. Basically, you cannot write code with another person together. It's almost impossible. Like for example, you want to figure out, oh, can I do object detection? Just like figure out where the I don't know how to say, train a model that picks up people with shopping carts. It's like, how do you, like when you in your data collection process, in your like exploratory whatever, it's really like, what does it mean to collaborate? So even the individual contributors, they're like, oh, I don't really know what it means to collaborate. So it falls into kind of like silo in itself. But even for like more software oriented tasks, they also feel a little siloed. And so I think I took that ownership too far. So for example, I gave one of the person this problem and say, oh, we want a active learning pipeline. Let's not forget about what active learning is. Like, doesn't matter. Just it's like a very vague problem. And so, okay, like, can you build it? And so she took it and she built something, but she also feels it's pretty siloed because it's like nobody know what each other is doing, although everybody knows everyone is making progress. And it's kind of, in terms of like what they're building, they're pretty happy about it. Just like they don't know what each other's doing. So we came together as a team, and I was like, okay, like we feel a little siloed. What should we do? and we discussed a little bit, and then so starting tomorrow, we're gonna try another method, and maybe we'll have some other ways of maybe I have some other things I can report, but we decided to do more kind of like more structured. I don't know how, like Kanban, Scrum, however you name it. Like we're not like actually like sprint, but we're gonna do more like a time-based release. So the idea was that as a team, I think every 3 weeks, we're going to decide on what we're gonna do as a team, and then we will put together, like walk through. Okay, I think these are the big objectives we want to hit as a team. And in those big objectives, the objective are likely something you will be able to explain to somebody outside the team, and you can say, "Oh, I did this because of X, Y, Z," because it will provide value X, Y, Z for you, or we think that it might provide value X, Y, Z for you, or we think it will help solving problem X, Y, Z, although we don't have immediate value to prove, or something like that. So those are external objectives, but in the meantime, we break it down into smaller tasks and decide as a team what can be done. But and then we say, okay, like we're not gonna go ahead and assign who's gonna do what. So we're changing it. As before, it was more like me discussing with the team, and then I assign who does what. But now we want to do, okay, like if that doesn't help, like creates a silo, maybe we can try to do the poll system so people can decide what card or what tasks they want to do. We're using Jira in our project management system, but I'm still pretty bad at using Jira, so we're gonna try to figure it out. But the idea is that you have like a bunch of tasks every 2 weeks that we're for the first 2 weeks, we're gonna work on the cards and then just poll it as a team. And the reason is that we don't want to. We will have assigned difficulty on them. Some people, I think, call it points, like what's the point of the card? But we will not blame a person for like, oh, you only did 5 points in the last 2 weeks. But overall, we will evaluate the team's performance on how many things we did as a team. So like, try to figure out a way so we kind of like we get evaluated as a team and instead of our individuals. But in the meantime, we still want like ownership. So what we're gonna try is one of my colleagues suggested this co-pilot system. So we have 2 projects. We have 2 major. We will have at least 2 major objectives. We'll probably pick like less objectives than the number of people, so we make sure some people will work on the same thing. But we're gonna say, for this objective, you are the primary owner. You will make sure that this works, and then you'll have a co-pilot who will be your sounding board or rubber duck or whatever. And so if you take a break or you're like, I don't know, you need to take a sick day or whatever, we always have somebody else there, and people can this person can be the, how do you say, backup for everything. Because like and like in this case, that the code review for the first person role or these 2 people will likely have a lot of mutual code reviews, so they know the internals of the code as well. If something goes like is harder than both of them imagine, then we will jump on it as a team. The four of us or 5 of us will just jump on it. But the idea is that we'll have a team-based point system, and we try to achieve as many points as possible as a team. But in the meantime, for the major objectives, we'll have pilot and co-pilot. So you get some ownership, but you're because you can't. I think you can't just like shuffle people. I don't think that can work in our situation, because the major objectives also have business owner tied to them. So you cannot just say, hey, I'm gonna pull this person out and put another person in, and and tell my PM that, hey, now you're gonna talk to her instead of him or something like that. I don't think that's gonna work. But in terms of the technical contribution or the work that we do internally as a team, we try to put some more structure around it I don't know if that will turn out well. So I'm running an experiment.
Check. I got a
The
follow up question real fast.
Yeah.
You say you've got this Copilot system. How many tasks would you say that each one person is working on at once? Because I work with a team of I've got 2 developers on one team, and then I just joined a team where I'm a developer with like maybe I think 3 other developers on average, and I feel like when you've got a team of 3 people total, you're gonna have the issue of then you're gonna have like 3 tasks and everyone has like a bunch of tasks funneled on them, and they're the co-pilot on a bunch of other tasks as well. I was wondering, how do you manage that in a small team of 5?
I actually don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but the thing we have thought of is like, okay, we probably want to limit the amount of large objectives less than the number of people available.
Okay, so so for you guys, it would be like a max of 4 large objectives.
Yeah, probably 3.
3.
Ideally, we want at least at least one less.
Wow.
And it's just like, I don't know. I think mathematically speaking, that guarantees some sort of collaboration. Because our goal, like the reason I switched to that was because my teammates expressed that, hey, we want to make it less of a silo. Although we talk to each other every day, we have like a daily 5-minute stand up. We still feel a little silo because we don't know what's actually going on in each other's code. We don't feel knowledgeable about like taking over.
And also come out and say one thing. So Cheng, what you're doing is something we did at Axial, and that was very successful, where we limited the amount of projects. And sometimes we go crossways. One person would be, we called it, I forget the words, but it was like the primary on it, and someone was like the consultant on it, and the other person was the developer, and the person in the consultative role, their job was to kind of make sure the problem was very clearly understood. And they worked partly on like getting like the business logic down, making sure we understood the outcome. They were working with product a lot and other aspects of the business, and the developer's job was to kind of work directly with them. Ultimately, we were all like developing features, training models and stuff, but it helped us a lot because we were very siloed before, and code reviews were very difficult because the learning curve of getting someone up to speed on not only your code, and this is a challenge of data science, it's not just code, it's also data. So it's code with data. So unlike in an application, yeah, sure, you can document it a lot, but and understanding like the nuances of the different models and stuff. There was just, we found it was like code reviews were just, we were sinking a lot of time in them, and it wasn't really producing a lot of value. So when we switched to the primary and secondary, it worked really well. But it wasn't like necessarily like the primary and secondary, like you weren't just working on one set of tasks. Like you would split up, I mean, when building a model, like you would split the features up between the 2 of you. You would be coordinating on, I'm going to be testing out XGBoost, and someone else was going to try a neural network. Like you were just dividing the work up between the 2 of you. And that's what we found, that it helped kind of improve like not having silos, but it also ensured that code reviews weren't so anomalous, like going in and just like kind of cold, like looking like, oh my gosh. Some of the things we tried to do is like standardize a lot of stuff to help with that a bit as well. But Colin, I have actually one follow-up. So when you're saying a lot of tasks are coming in, is this like bug fixes are coming in, or additional feature requests are coming in, and it's kind of disrupting you and your team's flow?
So in my case, I'll dive into a little bit of the specifics of Camelot right now. We're trying to build we have an MVP right now. We're trying to improve upon that, to provide something to pitch to investors, and we're about to jump into like a major 3-week sprint of like fixing design, like doing design improvements, doing logic fixes, all that kind of stuff. Basically constant bug fixes. We're going to have people constantly testing the app, and so we're going to have constant bug fixes, constant feature requests, everything you could imagine coming in.
How are you managing that intake?
Well, right now I'm still trying to figure that out myself. The main system is, it's not the most professional, but for our bug testers we have a Discord server, and that's where they're going to be reporting bugs. And that worked pretty well beforehand. And then we also used Trello for actually delegating tasks and managing that. The only issue is that when we bring on more than I'll call them our 2 senior developers. We have a bunch of developers that are like on the back end, not really working on anything right now. Our 2 primary devs, though, they're the main ones that use the Trello. We bring anyone else into the fray, it gets a little disorganized because it's hard to tell when a project's finished, when who's working on what at that point. It just gets super chaotic in that front.
Okay, I was just curious about that because I was having some issues with that as well, and I hate using the word sprint because I feel like it's so loaded. I like using the word time box because I feel like it steps away from it, and it just kind of is that a regular check-in. That's something that has been a game changer for my team. We started off with 1 week sprints thinking we would actually increase. We've actually decided to stay with 1 week sprints because of the fact that it helps us keep very aligned on what work needs to be done. And we decided that we weren't going to extend it because the longer you make the sprint, the easier it is to kind of get off track and stuff to sneak in. Because realistically, I work at a startup and objectives change and priorities shift. And we landed on 1 week because it allows us to communicate to the business that this is our sprint, this is what we're working on this week. And it's pretty acceptable to say like, okay, this new thing has come in, we'll prioritize with our product team, but we're not going to work on it until our next sprint. Unless, we have a ticket, we use GitHub. We have a flag and a label called high priority. And high priority is essentially an instance where something is impacting our platform where a user can't use it. That is like the only criteria that allows someone like an issue to kind of come in and break the sprint. Cheng, you talked about a lot. I just want to comment. I love doing a pull system. I do that with my team as well, and I found that to be very successful. That's the kind of ownership that, when I say ownership, that's the kind of ownership I mean. Because ultimately, like, at the end of the day, people who own the project, none of the people in this chat own our projects. Well, I can't speak for Colin. I don't know. You may actually own some.
I was high up at one point. Now I'm not so much because of interpersonal difficulties. We'll just say, but I will say I do not own this project at this point.
Okay. Anywho, but really, the people that own the project are stakeholders. So they truly own the project. It's, they tell us the what. I like to say, product tells me what, I will tell them how and when. So now that I've kind of couched it with that framework, one that has helped me because I'm not really as worried about what we're developing. I'm more worried about making sure that my team's aligned with product on a week-to-week basis on, hey, this is what we're working on the next week. Cheng, I think that's actually a little different for you because I think, aren't you developing, like, you've come up with products?
Yeah, so I think this is where it gets tricky because I think Colin's case is also different. My case is a little different because our team do have say on product because we will tell them this is possible and this is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, we're trying to get our team to do that more. We actually had a call today where it was basically the CEO of the company, where it was me, him, our designer, our 2 developers, and we were basically like, okay, can we do this, or do we need to switch platforms that we're using? Like, is this functionally possible, or is it functionally impossible to do? That's a very helpful conversation to have.
One thing I got from kind of like my team was, which we're basically trying to do, is this point system. Try to figure out what is possible and impossible for the team because we didn't run that, but some other teams on our bigger team does that, and what they say is like it helps people discover each other's kind of like strength because something you think will take 10 hours, the other person will be, oh no, it only takes 1 hour, and then this 10-hour person will say, oh, so why is that? And the 1 hour person will say, oh yeah, so you do X and you do Y and you do Z and you're done. So it's like there are things by having almost like a ritual of sorting out what can be done together as a team. You reduce the risk of committing to something that's impossible, and also you improve the efficiency by kind of like exchanging information. And
Yeah.
that's what I got from the. I have not tried it on our team yet, so we'll see what happens.
I think it's a good. You're touching on the strength of it. Is that pointing as a team, and I know that's like the pitfall of don't use points to equate to any type of time. But pointing is a great way to have that kind of conversation. You kind of, I've been in settings where it's a little more extreme and we're given cards. And this is, we used to sit around a room and an issue would get brought up and you would bring up your card of it's like 1, 3, 5, 7, stuff like that. That's not what we do on my team. Typically during our grooming sessions, we as a group will kind of, we'll look at our product backlog, which is the backlog that I negotiate with our product team about saying like, okay, these are the top things at the backlog. Is this still true? Do we need to shift things around? But once product has said, okay, this is our product backlog. These are the tasks that are considered a high priority. We will then go in as a group and we'll groom those out and say like, oh yeah, this is a, 3 people will say it's a 5 and 1 person says it's a 2. And that's an instance of like, they happen to have done something similar to this before. And they even have like code that they could point other people to. I don't know. I think in that setting, it helps with knowledge share, and just kind of level sets. And then on the end of that, we use that for determining, like loosely using it to determine capacity. We're never gonna, want this, some things we've also determined we need to break tasks down. Because sometimes we pointed a couple things that like this was an 8 because when the ticket was created, we didn't realize the complexity that went into it. So as we were stepping through it, we're like, oh, this is an 8. Well, we actually probably at that point need to break this ticket down into multiple tickets. So that was another aspect of that. But yeah, then we use that as a loose kind of measure of like when we're committing to work, how much work do we think we can commit to in a given week? Which is all estimates. At the end of the day, sometimes you overcommit and it's okay. Sometimes you undercommit, which you just kind of pull from the top of the product backlog at that point.
So when you all are like in the middle of strategizing a project or like, I guess, scoping it, determining what the requirements are, sometimes, like for me at least, my work is a bit different. I'm in a G&A org versus, it sounds like there's a lot of development going on for the 3 of you. But something will come up or we'll say, oh, we want to change reporting this way. And then we think of all of the issues that might arise and which ones are really important and high priority. And then there's a, like an edge case we think of that doesn't actually apply right now because maybe it's a new product or something. But as volume increases, we'll want to go back and address it later because then it will become a reporting issue. Do similar things like that occur for you? And when they happen, what sort of resource do you use for like capturing the need to go back to that at a later point and like assigning responsibility for that?
I can probably say a little bit because the reason we're gonna experiment we're doing two week sprint, but we're only doing planning every 3 weeks. So we have 1 week of basically slack. And the reason was because in our current line of things we're trying to develop, there's so many unknown. Like we have like all 5 of us, we're jumping into this unknown domain called computer vision. And there's like so much to learn, so much to read, so much to explore, like what can be done, what cannot be done. There are edge cases, like we're just from the data that we're seeing, there's so many weird stuff that's going on that we don't know. And we're like, we gotta build in some sort of exploratory freedom to our schedule and kind of like prepare for the future. So for example, on my team, I let my teammates say, hey, every Friday is learning day. You can use this time for optional learning because we absolutely need it. So we're actually taking like Coursera course together. But I don't tell my manager that because we're still delivering. But I just say that we need Slack. Like I almost kind of like I would do this. I don't know if this is the best way. I think there's probably a better way to do this, but like for example, I would ask somebody on my team to say, "Oh, how long do you think we can finish this?" And she would say 2 weeks. And then I turn around, I tell everybody that's not in my team, it's gonna take us 4 weeks.
How are you arriving at that 2 weeks? So yeah, I'll leave it at that. How are you arriving at 2 weeks?
That 2 weeks is something she pulled out of thin air.
Okay. So one thing I've tried to do is stop doing that because it gets anomalous, and not that estimating work like that is hard. What we've been doing though is we try and tease out as much of the things we can think about for that project and just like start creating those tickets. And then from those tickets, we'll point them out, and then using that, which I know is like breaking the cardinal rule of pointing, like don't use it for time estimates, but we use it for time estimates. I'm pretty sure most people do. And that's, we started coming up with deadlines with that approach. And we usually build in some Slack. So I think what's happening is kind of the same effect. We always build in, like, if we think something's going to take us, a day, we'll maybe bake in a day and a half or something like that. And over time, that kind of builds in the Slack, because some things will take half a day, some things will take 2 days. So it'll average out. But that has been something that has helped us on estimating out work, is by taking that time to like really scope out the items and then try and estimate based on thinking about how long each item will take. But that being said, data science is really difficult. And I'll say on the flip side, like I've gotten to the point on data science where I'm just like, we're not committing to hard deadlines on just about anything. And that's a luxury that I know I have. But it's just hard. It's hard to commit to hard deadlines. You don't know what you don't know. You're going to explore the data. You're going to find some features are going to be fantastic. Some trains of thought will be great. Some will be, this didn't really work out, which is good, because I mean, negative result is still a result. It's good to document that. But I don't know. That's just one pitfall that I encountered that I'm working really hard to. Whenever I throw any dates out, like, take the time, break it apart. And then one other thing, I really like the Learning Fridays. I actually implemented that on my team as well. I don't know. I think if you couch it right to leadership, I don't know. And I mean, it depends on your leadership. StrataSan has a very, my CTO is a software developer, so he gets it. We've couched every Friday is projects, and it's not just learning, it's also pet projects. So any project, one of my people, he sees, he wants to learn about graph databases. So he's doing some like work with, because he wants to do some like network analysis. So he's looking at a Neo4j right now. Stuff like that, where you kind of encourage them to be creative and kind of work on projects that aren't necessarily tied to any objective, but is of interest to them. I like it because to me, it helps improve engagement, which is ultimately at the end of the day, as a people leader, that's, I don't know, one of the things that I always strive to make sure is my people are engaged.
I was going to go back to your original point. That I feel I didn't say that. I think if you don't ask for it, like find a way to build the Slack in, then you will not get it. That was my impression.
No, I agree. And then, so Nicole, when those stuff comes up, I mean, what we do is it all goes into our product backlog, and it's on the product team and stakeholders for them to manage that. Because at the end of the day, like I said, they tell me the what, and they tell me what things they care about. To me, as a engineering manager or a data science manager, like it's my job to say how we'll do it and guide that. And then I'll also help provide guidelines around, timelines, not guidelines, timelines around when it will be done. But because it's just too much. Like, yeah, absolutely. I hear what you're saying. Like you think about these what ifs, and then You know this will be an issue 6 months down the road. So it's important to capture that and put it in ticket form because you don't want to lose sight of that. But at that point, I think you should be giving ownership to whoever owns that product because it's more important to them. Like you're not going to lose sleep over if this thing gets done because you have other things that you're going to be losing sleep over.
Yeah, I will lose sleep over it. No, like knowing if it's not documented somewhere, because that means like when that edge case does occur, there will be a reporting issue, and someone's going to get that question about, hey, like why does this look weird? And so it's like, I think a lot of the people on my team worry about things like that popping up, and I think if we had the opportunity to capture it in one location, that would solve a lot of it. And it's just that we have a lot of projects that are sort of like mini projects or junior projects. So we have a project manager on our team who's responsible for those really big, high profile, high priority projects that require even more collaboration outside of the revenue operations team. But within the revenue operations team, we kind of have to be our own project manager sometimes because, people have limits. But trying to streamline the things that pop up during those projects is just what we're trying to do, and to say like, okay, this small conversation we had about a what if is turning into a project, and at that point saying, okay, now let's go into like, let's identify someone who's going to go ahead and start capturing all this information. Like, let's put responsibility on someone. It seems like those basic fundamentals are just something that we need to start employing consistently. And it doesn't matter like what system you use, just as long as you start doing it and everyone knows where to look for it.
I mean, you could use Excel or Google Sheets. Like the tool is irrelevant. Stuff like Trello. I love Jira. I will say Jira can be very complex, and that's a bit of a negative side to it. We use ZenHub, which has really tight integration with GitHub. I think at the end of the day, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's about that rigor of when a project comes up, not just starting work on the project, but first scoping it out. What problem are you actually trying to solve, or what report are you generating? What's the purpose of the report you're generating or augmenting? What's the purpose? Like, why are you doing it? Getting that very clearly defined. And then once you have the why clearly defined, which that why should be defined by who is using it and who's impacted by it. So if this is by sales or marketing, like they're the ones that should be telling you. I know early on in my career that like the most vivid project I ever worked on, I was working on a dashboard for sales. And I built this awesome dashboard and I demoed it to them. They all loved it. And I noticed that like in like the first few days of releasing it, like it had a lot of activity, but after a week, no one was using it. And it was because they gave me the requirements and I just kind of went off and built it. Because I didn't clearly understand the why of what it was being done. I heard they needed some data points and stuff, but I didn't fully understand the problem. So really just kind of trying to hammer home, like you really want whoever owns it and whoever's going to be impacted it, they need to have that ownership of like saying why this is important. And I hear you about those edge cases and it's hard to account for them. The biggest thing comes down to is like, what's the priority? Do you need to build these edge cases? Do you need to account for these edge cases now, or do you have other projects that you really need to be focusing on instead?
Right. Or maybe identifying like an expiration date or like a due date that might be dynamic. So maybe we say, okay, we don't actually need to deal with that until sales on this specific product line reaches this amount. And then we can, build a triggered report and looker that will send us an email when we need to start thinking about it. But identifying that and like tasking someone with doing that, like, I think that's just what we're needing to do. And we have Jira, which is great. It's just that since we're so many teams, like we don't all use Jira. maybe getting everyone converted over would help, but also maybe just going to like an Excel sheet. I think default has been I'm taking meeting notes, so at the end of the meeting, one person who took the most notes will share a Google Doc, and like the text format of a Google document doesn't really, I don't think it really lends itself as well to like keeping organized with who's doing what and like being able to sort things and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I said a Google Sheet. I mean, I don't actually, I think something at a minimum Trello, something that's a Kanban board. Jira is good. I like Kanban boards because it's very easy for you or your stakeholders to go in and you can set up your swim lanes. You have your backlog. You have your, you know, on deck. You have your in progress. You have your review, and you have your done. Or you could just have 3 lanes: to do, in progress, done. You know, you can make it as sophisticated or as simple as you want, but it kind of gives you that idea of what's being worked on. And then any ticketing platform has a who's assigned to what. You can also assign multiple people and most platforms to a ticket, and you can also use that as a means of tracking conversations around work. That's one thing that I was struggling a lot when I got started, is that oftentimes we'd have a lot of conversations in Slack, or we'd have conversation in email, and that was not making its back way into our ticket. So now I've been really kind of honing in on, hey, you just had to have a conversation about this in Slack. Please copy that into the ticket. So we're consolidating conversations in a single spot that, you know, if we need to go back and see what that conversation was about that issue, we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so, you know, we all met on a project and we all kind of started doing our individual things, and then a question came up like, hey, we need to change this, but do we also need to change this? So then there's like a 10 comment long like comment chain on one cell in a Google sheet where a decision was made. And then I'm like, when are we going to capture that decision, like in the main document? So that could even happen in Jira. Like, say you've got a ticket and you've got this long comment chain. It's good that it's in the ticket, that it's in a more immediate place. But then, like saying, okay, hey, so and so, can you document this decision up in the like in the ticket description, and just having the person who's kind of in charge of monitoring that and then documenting it, just keeping it organized. Yeah.
Oh no, and then one other pitfall of that though on the other side is that putting everything in the ticket is when you complete that ticket, the work gets done, that decision gets done. It's important to also make sure you have some form of like universal documentation about what decisions have been made. Because I have also experienced where, yeah, we made this decision, we did all this awesome work, and like 6 months goes by and we're like, wait, why did this thing get done? And then, yeah, we can find the ticket, but it can be a little cumbersome. So it's also having, we actually use Google, we use Google Docs to manage like our requirements and stuff. We just have very highly curated folders of like, this is where our products are. And in those projects, we have like subfolders and then all Google Docs in there of like all the requirements and decisions that have been made. That's kind of helped making sure that we don't lose that information in our ticketing system. Yeah.
So at the beginning of a project, would you say that some of like the Google Docs of getting all of those requirements scoped out, does that happen? Like, do you do that all in Jira at first and then create a summary, or do you have a Google Doc that then, after that turns into tickets?
So for us, it typically starts like at StrataZen. It typically starts in whatever platform our product people decide. Like we have, sometimes it starts in a Slack conversation and we kind of translate that into a Google Doc. If it's on the developer side, in ZenHub, there's a concept of epics, and an epic can have multiple issues associated with it. And so usually what we'll do is we'll just spin up an epic, and then we'll just, in the description, we'll kind of just put everything there so we understand. And then from that epic, we can then create the issues to kind of accomplish that epic. I don't think the platform is as important as just that exercise of establishing why you're doing something and what impact it's going to have. Who's really the owner? Who's impacted by it? So when I say owner, like who cares about it? Like if this gets done, like whose life does it make better if you get this done? That's what I mean by owner. Establishing that and then kind of stepping through what are the steps to get it done.
And I think another one is like who cares about this project, but then also who will care about this project once it's done. Like who doesn't really realize what's going to happen when this project is done. And when, you know, facing that repercussion of like, okay, who is going to care about this later, who might not know about it now? Like one person might want something, and then thinking through like the impacted parties who might need to be like just informed, maybe not consulted, but informed at the very least.
I mean, at that point, so I push a lot of that stuff onto our product team, because to me, that's like I mean, and not to say like that's not something you shouldn't do. I've been in roles where I had to do that as well, especially when I was in more of like a data engineering role, but I also did a lot of Power BI stuff at that point. You're having to coordinate with like operations because someone's asking to change a report that 20 other people use. So managing that can be tricky, and there's no simple solution to that. It's like I don't know.
It's good to hear, because that thing that you described is pretty much a ton of what we do.
Right.
A lot of reporting, a lot of, you know, pushing metrics out and wanting to make sure that we're all on the same set. And it only gets better and better over time, because it's, you know, it's what we've been honing in on, but, you know, just wanting to make sure as more changes happen, we stay on top of it. But it's good to hear, like, it's just a difficult thing. And
it's hard. Communication is hard, and not everyone agrees on anything. You know, person A wants you to change it to this font, person B wants it the other font, you know. That's just a hard thing to manage. At the end of the day,
luckily we don't have to deal with fonts.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like establishing who gets to make the decision, I guess, really would be the biggest thing, because someone needs to be able to make the decision on that. So figuring out who that is, I think, would be the key.
Yeah, and then part of it is we know who should be making the decision, but we want to make sure that all of the tiny things that each one of us knows about is, you know, that causes us worry, like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about this? Like, not inundating the decision maker with every tiny thing, but identifying a good digest version of the implications that it's going to have, like, and then putting that communication back up. Is that a Maine Coon?
It's not a Maine Coon. She is a turquoise.
Oh.
She's a sweetie, but she also gets very jealous when I'm on meetings. I'll say this. I mean, I hear you on like all the edge cases and making sure all that gets accounted for. At the end of the day, the best you can do is document it and then present that, like let them review it. Because that can be very overwhelming. Make sure it's documented in some sort of ticket. And if you can group those tickets together, that's also really important, because like you said, if you have a project that you're working on and you know, there's some potential lingering things, those can easily get lost in like a backlog. So making sure there's some sort of form of check-in. And, you know, there's some instances where I actually will create like calendar notifications that, hey, check in on this project a month from now, or check in on this project 2 months from now. And I do that in Google Calendar. It's just like a simple reminder, completely outside of everything. It's a silly thing that I started doing a while ago, and it's just been helpful to me. Like if there's ever an instance where I need to do like a check-in on something, but I don't want it to be in like my ticketing platform as noise, I'll do something like that just to say like, all right, let's touch base on this. So you could do that with like Apple reminders or anything like that.
Yeah. I was just looking at my notes to see if there are any other questions I had. I know we're getting at to an hour. I have one other question if no one else. Ching, were you going to say something just now?
No, I was wondering, like, Colin, you're in a startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think startup, like early stage startup, is a very, very different environment than what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot more rushed, primarily. The way that our system basically goes is we have two people that decide on product. They tell developers what they need, and then the developers are basically like, okay, you now have like 3 days to complete this. So it'll get very hectic sometimes. But I do like what we've been talking about, like move away from estimates and all that. That I wish we could do that. I hope I can find some way to do that, because removing estimates from our area of work would be so helpful.
I would bet, I don't know, but I feel in like early stage startup, you almost need that trust of your product,
Yeah.
whoever owns the product, because everybody knows, at least I guess, like I hope it's like everybody's on a time crunch. You have limited runway, so everybody's on a time crunch, and so the product owners will try to make the best decision, and you need that trust with the developers to say, hey, like, I trust your decision, so let me just go ahead and do my best of developing the feature you're asking.
Yeah. But I also think it's good when you Alex, you were talking about earlier, you know, you described yourself as sort of like a middleman between product and developers, right? And that having one person to like facilitate that conversation is so important, because like when you're a developer, it's hard to communicate to like a project owner how something is gonna go, right? Because they're not gonna understand. Like right now, the discussion is: do we switch from React Native Expo to React Native CLI? And it's hard for the CEO to understand like all of the reasons why we should do that, rather than like I'm sitting there as the middleman between the devs, and I'm like, yeah, we should do this 100%.
And I would come back. And this is where I've taken the stance, and my situation is unique. I've actually specifically told product they're not allowed to tell me how to build something.
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell me how, you tell me what, and then I will tell you how. And I'll give you really good reasons on why, how, whether it's, industry standards or, because of some nuance of our use case, if we're going to do it a certain way. But that's on me and my team to figure out, to kind of negotiate up. Where really, and I don't know, it's improved my relationship with product a lot because of that fact, because then they're not thinking about how, they're not researching, should we be using Airflow or Luigi? No, stop. You shouldn't care about that. You should care about what product that we're trying to sell to our clients.
Yeah.
I think couching it that way it divides up work and actually makes life kind of easier for everyone.
Yeah. I also see our guys on product falling a lot to like sunk cost, because they're saying like right now they're not even researching why we shouldn't move to different platforms. Their main argument is, well, we have what we have right now, rather than move to a new platform where we can have a lot of scalability. Let's just finish up what we have now. And we're like, you also have like 15 features that require this scalability.
That is, that happens to any company, and I mean, that's you have to rely on your leadership to kind of understand that what is being. I mean, that's something that encountered me, and that's, I had to put a stop on certain products being developed because we were being asked to develop something, and the framework we had adopted just wouldn't support it. Like, you're asking me to build something that's nearly impossible.
Yeah,
will not scale at all.
No.
But that's just a hard conversation, you as a kind of that go-between have to have.
I think it's just all about good communication at that point. Yeah.
And trust. I think a lot of it comes down to, I think Chang touched on it. It touches on trust. Like, you have to trust that they are giving you the right what to build, and then they have to trust you that you are, doing your best to build it the best way you can and building it in the most efficient way you can.
Yeah.
Saying no at the right time helps.
I say so. no with reasons. You can't just say no. You can't just say I don't want to. It has to, I've always, when I've come back with that, it's always we can't do this because of XYZ. And then I will propose, but it's no and propose. I'm going to say we can't do it this way, and I'm going to propose a solution. So that way the conversation doesn't stop with, well, Alex told me no. It stops with, we are starting on a conversation about how are we going to accomplish the what, which is really what they're interested in.
Well,
we started a little late, Nicole, so if you want to answer your question, we can squeeze that in.
For projects, you're saying that a lot of stuff comes up in Slack and just in all these, it all depends on the place where the conversation had its genesis. I've been reading up a lot on like asynchronous communication and how that can be really important for teams that are spread across multiple time zones. And I think we already answered my question, which was like, when we're talking about projects, making sure that we maintain all of those decisions asynchronously. If it's all in a ticketing system, then it is documented asynchronously. So you don't have to worry like, oh, maybe someone did have a conversation in Slack, but as long as there's someone who is like has the dedicated responsibility of updating that ticket with that information, as long as everyone understands, like, assume no one knows about anything unless it's in that ticket. I think that's the way to go. So.
No, I absolutely agree.
Question and answer.
Yeah, I'd also say my team probably needs to get better at that, but we also, I would say one thing that is really helpful for communication is, the CEO is a big guy on visual big on the idea that people are visual learners, right? And so one thing we've started doing is, rather than feeding our developers like, okay, we need the product to do XYZ, we'll film a video, and then using the app Loom, so we'll just go on a phone, record a video, and then send it to them, and just be like, here is where exactly in the app this needs to go, and this is how it needs to function, and then here's a comparison to another app that does something similar. We found that that's really helpful for product design.
Yeah, Todoist put out this really cool asynchronous communication guide, and in it they talked about over communicate. So translating what Colin just explained to like reporting, instead of saying, hey, can I get a report of these common metrics, and then that's it. Or, hey, when you have a minute, can I get a report of these common metrics? Instead, like, hey, by this date, I would like a report of these specific metrics set out by, quarter or month or year. And here's an example of a report that someone has done for me in the past that's very similar, but, maybe exchange certain things. So over communicating it versus under communicating it, but also leading back to the requesters, that's helpful. That way you don't just guess or think that you know what they want. That's a common thing. Is someone asking something like, hey, when you have a minute, can you read my mind? And I know that they don't intend to do that. They're just, taking care of business. But yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's, we have a flag that will flag things of like we call it need product feedback. And that's essentially the catch-all of, we looked at this, we kind of determined, we don't have enough information because, assumptions are dangerous. So, no, I really like that. And also, it's about training the people that are asking you of things, because it's a two-way street. They're asking you to build things. You need them to help you build those things. So.
Yeah, and if you never provide the feedback that, hey, it would be helpful if your initial request had a little more detail, such as like the due date, the specific metrics you're wanting. They're not going to know
Jira's
that.
about. Jira has a lot of like good templating stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't you do a lot of like custom
you can do
fields on
fire.
Jira and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just you don't want to tell your CFO like, could you make a Jira ticket? You know.
I mean, I hear you. That is fair. But at that point, you could just so in instances where I've experienced that, I go in when a C-suite comes in and gives me a request, I go in and create the ticket for them. And if I didn't think to ask them for this required information, it prompts you to then go back to them and say, "Hey, CFO, you know, could you give me a moment? You asked me for this thing, but you didn't mention when you needed this by, or you didn't mention, you know, what business unit that, you know, this report was supposed to be like." So when any of those like required information, even if you're going in and filling out the ticket,
Yeah.
it still reminds you to ask those questions.
Yeah, I like that a lot because a lot of times I'll get caught up in the excitement of just wanting to get this information to someone like, oh, this person pinged me on Slack about this thing. I'm going to get it for them right now. When really they might, you know, if I just went, okay, went through the checklist of like, when do you need this by? I might find out they're just like, oh, whenever, like maybe 2 weeks from now, versus like dropping everything on a project and just serving that request right then and there. So,
and then you also capture the work on that request.
yeah.
I think this is like the best tip for me at the night, because I think I was reading this book a while ago called Getting Things Done by David Allen, and in there when he's like basically having like a Trello, swim lane, however you call it, but when he moves things from kind of like intake to like you're about to do it, he goes through this process called clarification. Kind of basically like goes back to what you say. You want to clarify what has to be done and all the information you need about it before you start doing it. So it's like I think that's really important to say that by the action of creating a comprehensive ticket forces you to collect all the information to operate well, and also it gives you an excuse if the other side who asks you or like who's making the request say, hey, like you need this, but because you're thinking through it again, you'll be able to pick up like missing details other than this person may be on a time crunch or something, so they just come to you with a request.
Absolutely. It's so easy for everyone to think you can read their mind. And that is one problem with asynchronous communication, is that you lose a lot of those body cues and verbal cues that when someone comes to you with your request. Does it seem urgent? I don't know. You sent me a message over Slack. Like, I can't tell if that was an urgent thing. Like, are you, you know, is your hair on fire, or are you, you know, sipping mimosa?
Here's something that I do like. So, you know, my dad's company, they're moving over to Teams, right? They're for a little context on that, they've got an office based here in Tennessee, they've got an office based in New Jersey, and they've got an office based in Hong Kong. And so they're trying to bring all of these teams together for easier communication. And something that Teams has is if you're sending someone a direct message and you're not in like a public announcements channel, sort of, it has 3 different settings. And you can say, hey, this is just a normal message. If the person's on Do Not Disturb, don't worry about it. You can say, hey, this is a priority, and it'll say, hey, this person's on Do Not Disturb, just go ahead and send the message over. Or you can say, this is urgent, and it will notify them every like 10 minutes until they open it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
I feel like it's a little... It could be a little abused, but I do like the feature, I will say.
It makes people think.
Yeah.
I think we were also excited after you said that. We all started talking over each other, and now we don't have. But I like that a lot. I'll snooze myself on Slack when I'm wanting to go heads down for like an hour at a time. And then people know they can click through the snooze if it's super urgent. But the downside of that is that, like, if you go to get a drink of water and you have an icon down in Slack, you don't know if someone clicked through the snooze or or if they didn't, because the only way you know is there'll be one little thing that comes up that says so and so is trying to reach you, and so I'm still on high alert. I don't know if that's just if there's more to Slack that I don't understand.
I just think Slack has a bad notification system. Like at Camelot, we do all our work through Discord. Discord has an even worse notification system. Where like because I'm a moderator on so many large community servers, I can't really go on Do Not Disturb, and even when I do, my phone will still go off. It only Do Not Disturbs my computer for some reason. So it's like I'm never truly away. I'll always get a message, which can be annoying.
Yeah, something like that. But the Teams thing sounds very cool.
Yes.
Maybe
All
there's
right. Well, I think we've hit time, y'all.
definitely. This was
This has been
great.
fun. Yeah. No, thank you for setting this up, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing what you know.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.